Hello and welcome to the World News right here on VOP TV. My name is Esther Wachuku. We begin the world news from Russia, where authorities have denied that Ukrainian forces have made a breakthrough in the bloody battle for the city of Bakhmut, while the United Kingdom has become the first country to supply Ukraine with longer-range cruise missiles. Ukraine has requested long-range missiles from its Western allies for months, but has only received shorter-range weapons as supporters feared more advanced weapons would be used to strike targets inside Russian territory and further escalate the conflict. Now, UK Defence Minister Ben Wallace said on Thursday that Storm Shadow cruise missiles, which have a range of more than 150 miles compared with the US provided HIMARS range of some 50 miles, will be sent to Ukraine. Wallace said the cruise missiles are being sent for use within Ukrainian territory, implying he had received assurances from Kiev that they will not be used to hit targets inside Russia. The Kremlin previously said that the UK's provision of such missiles would require an adequate response from the Russian military. Russia's defense ministry was forced to deny reports that Ukrainian troops had made advances in the month-long fight for Bakhmut on Thursday. Now, an earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 5.2 jolted eastern Japan early on Thursday, including Chiba Prefecture and downtown Tokyo, leaving several people injured, according to the Japanese weather agency and local authorities. The 4:16 a.m. quake registered upper 5 on the Japanese earthquake intensity scale of 7 in Kisarazu and lower 5 in Kimitsu, both in Chiba Prefecture, and 4 in areas including Tokyo's Chiyoda and Shinagawa wards, according to the meteorological agency. No tsunami warning was issued. Now, the agency defines an upper 5 on the Shido scale as a situation in which many people find it difficult to work. It was the first time since March 2012 that Chiba Prefecture had been rocked by an upper 5 quake, according to the agency. Now we want to bring in John Akerele to help us discuss the earthquake situation and to get more insights into what really transpired concerning the state of things. However, in the course of the news, we'll definitely bring him in virtually for us to extemporate further on that particular story. Now, Israeli forces have continued to strike, or rather strike the Gaza Strip for the 4th day in a row, bringing the total death toll from airstrikes to 31, which includes 36 children and 3 women on Friday. Palestinian Health Ministry says 31 people, including 6 children and 3 women, have been killed and 93 others, including 32 children and 17 women, has been injured in the last 4 days of Israeli forces' air attacks. The statement came after the ministry announced the death of a Palestinian who succumbed to his injuries sustained during an Israeli raid in northern Gaza. 5 senior members of the Islamic Jihad organization were also killed in the Israeli attacks on Gaza. Earlier, the Israeli army destroyed a home owned by the Palestinian Bashir family at dawn on Friday as Israeli raids on various locations in the southern Gaza Strip continued. Meanwhile, armed Palestinian factions have retaliated by firing rocket-propelled grenades at Israeli military sites adjacent to the Gaza Strip. Israel's National Emergency Medical Service, Magen David Adom, reported that a rocket fired from Gaza struck a residential building in the central Israeli city of Rehovot, resulting in 1 fatality and 5 injuries. Regional and international powers have urged an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Palestine, but has been unsuccessful thus far. Now, the Israeli army has said the airstrikes are part of its Operation Shield and Arrow, an offensive launched after rockets were fired from Gaza following the death of a Palestinian inmate who was on a hunger strike in an Israeli prison. According to Palestinian figures, more than 160 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces since the start of this year, and at least 20 Israelis have been killed in separate attacks during the same period. Meanwhile, local media say a rocket from Gaza landed near the Jewish settlement of Bat Ayin in the occupied West Bank, about 16 kilometers, which is 10 miles south of Jerusalem. However, no injuries were reported. Israel is reported to be carrying out airstrikes on Gaza in response. It comes as Egypt brokers talks for a ceasefire between the two sides. The health ministry in Gaza says 31 people, about half of the civilians, have been killed by Israeli airstrikes on Gaza since Israel carried out a surprise attack, killing 3 Palestinian Islamic Jihad militants on Tuesday. 1 Israeli was killed and 5 wounded by rocket fire in the same period. Let's now head to Sudan. In a major step towards ensuring the safety and security of civilians in Sudan, the Sudan Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces have signed a declaration of commitment to protect civilians. The agreement signed in Jeddah late on Thursday recognizes the obligations of both forces under international humanitarian and human rights law to facilitate humanitarian action to meet the agency, or rather to meet the emergency needs of civilians. Now, under the declaration, the two forces will guide their conduct to enable the safe delivery of humanitarian assistance, the restoration of essential services, the withdrawal of forces from hospitals and clinics, and the respectful burial of the dead. A statement issued by the American and Saudi mediators on Friday said, and I quote, "Following the signing, the Jeddah talks will focus on reaching an agreement on an effective ceasefire of up to approximately 10 days to facilitate these activities," end quote. The signing of the declaration will be followed by the Jeddah talks, which will focus on reaching an agreement on the ceasefire and establishing a U.S., Saudi, and international supported ceasefire monitoring mechanism. The talks will also address the proposed arrangement for subsequent talks on a permanent cessation of hostilities with Sudanese civilians and regional and international partners. The step-by-step approach agreed upon by the parties will include consultations with the SAF and RSF about the participation of Sudanese civilians and regional and international partners in subsequent round of talks. The facilitators said optimistic that these discussions will pave the way for a lasting peace agreement in Sudan. A Sudanese military member of the Sovereign Council said 2 days ago that the political process would involve all political forces, including the non-signatories of the Political Framework Agreement of December 5, 2022. Still on Sudan, UN right body expands experts' mandate to abuses committed during DAF-RSF conflicts. Vote of UN Rights Council on the expansion of the mandate of its expert on May 11, 2023. The Human Rights Council on Thursday expanded the mandate of its expert on human rights in Sudan to include violations committed during the ongoing conflict between the army and the paramilitary force. Accordingly, the expert will now have a broader scope of responsibility to monitor and report on all human rights violations and abuses since October 25, 2021, including those committed during the ongoing conflict between the Sudanese army and the RSF. The Council expressed grave concerns about the escalation of the violence in Sudan and called for an immediate cessation of violence and establishing safe humanitarian access. The resolution was adopted by a vote of 18 in favor, 15 against, and 14 abstentions, with several Arab and African countries abstaining or voting against. The Council also reaffirmed its commitment to support Sudan's transition towards a civilian-led government. It condemned sexual and gender-based violence, attacks on humanitarian workers, health workers, premises, and members of international organizations, civil society organizations, and the diplomatic community. On December 16, Radwan Nusser was appointed as a designated expert on human rights in Sudan by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights to monitor the human rights situation in Sudan after the October 25, 2021 coup and excessive use of violence against pro-democracy protesters. Now, in more news reports, Saudi Arabia has concluded the humanitarian evacuation of its citizens and other foreigners from conflict-ridden Sudan. The total number of civilians evacuated by Sudan by Saudi flagged ships and the Royal Saudi Air Force is 8,455, including 404 Saudis and others of 110 nationalities. The kingdom also aided several countries in evacuating 11,184 people from Sudan. The Saudi Foreign Ministry thanked brothers in Sudan for cooperating to facilitate the evacuation operations. The fighting that erupted on April 15 between Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his former deputy Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, who commands the RSF, has killed more than 750 people. The violence has also prompted hundreds of thousands of people to flee their homes, with the number of people internally displaced within Sudan more than doubling in a week to more than 700,000. On Thursday, U.S.-Saudi mediated talks between Sudan's army and the RSF in Jeddah made a slight breakthrough after signing an agreement that commits to protecting Sudanese civilians. Now, Pakistan's Supreme Court has ordered the release of former Prime Minister Imran Khan 2 days after his arrest sparked world or countrywide violence. Supreme Court Chief Justice Umar Atta Bandail also asked Khan to issue an appeal to his supporters to remain peaceful as the country faced growing turmoil in its streets. The supporters of Khan were seen dancing near the court building to celebrate his release. After being ousted from power in a no-confidence vote by lawmakers, Khan was faced with multiple corruption charges in Pakistani courts. With former Prime Minister Imran Khan in custody, Pakistani authorities on Thursday cracked down on his supporters, detaining hundreds in overnight raids and sending troops across the country to rein in the wave of violence that followed his arrest earlier this week. For this nation accustomed to military takeovers, political crisis and violence, the turmoil has been unprecedented. It echoed unrest that followed the 2007 assassination of former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto during an election rally in the garrison city of Rawalpindi. Her supporters at the time, outraged by her killing, rampaged for days across Pakistan. Clashes with police since Khan's dramatic arrest on Tuesday have left at least 10 of his supporters dead and dozens injured, along with more than 200 policemen injured. On Thursday, the clash with police in neighborhoods around Pakistan's second-largest city, Lahore, setting fire to a police car and blocking a train. Police said on Thursday that nearly 1,600 of Khan's supporters were arrested overnight around the country on charges of damaging public property and attacking military installations, bringing the total of those detained since Tuesday to 2,300. The arrest followed mob attacks on government and military buildings, with protesters torching trucks, cars and police vehicles in the streets and blocking highways. In one incident, hours after Khan's arrest, a mob set fire to the sprawling residence of a top army commander in Lahore. And that is a wrap on the world news right here on VOP TV. My name is Esther Wachuku. Now do remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Voice of the People TV and social media at VOP TV Live. Do have an amazing day.